What's up, Digilogue fam? It's your boy Drew. How's everyone doing during this quarantine? We're super excited to share you with this new episode of the L's, aka Lessons Learned, episode 7, with a good friend of mine, Edith Bo. But before we start, just want to make sure y'all are good. Hope you guys are staying creative at home. We're super appreciative of all the support, and we have a lot more programming for you guys for throughout this pandemic. But we're here as a resource. But more importantly, I want to introduce my good friend Edith. Edith Bo, what's going on?
Uh, I'm
Tuesday.
good. What was that?
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. It doesn't feel like a Tuesday.
I know.
You're forgetting what day it is.
So you just drove like almost 30 hours from Chicago to
I
LA.
did. I figured it was a good time to like just drive cross country. There was no traffic whatsoever, and gas is super cheap. So I just kind of went to go see my sister, say what's up to my family.
Yeah. More importantly, how's your family? How's everyone doing?
I think everyone's good. I think some of my family members. Hold on a second. My Chihuahua wants to go down on the ground. Problems from working from home. I think a lot of my family has had. They feel a little more comfortable being around each other now because I think some of us have felt sick, and we're pretty positive that we've had the virus at this point. So when we hung out, and it was totally fine, and I was there for about a week and a half. So everyone's feeling good. I think we're just like everyone's kind of ready to get back to work slowly. It's such an interesting time. It's like an experimental time. We're all trying to figure out how to make everything work and how to like be innovative, especially with like marketing in the industry and sessions and stuff. So I'm trying to like finesse different ways of doing things. I think that's like my major goal right now.
Yeah, I think everyone's in the same boat. I think everyone's adjusting to the digital space.
Yeah.
I think the idea of meetings has
No.
changed.
I think everyone's tired of Zoom meetings at this point.
Did you say Zoom meetings?
Zoom meetings? Yeah, I mean, conference meeting, whatever. FaceTime. I have never been FaceTimed so much in my life before, by the way.
I know. It's definitely been interesting change. I know like when I call people now, I think I'm more prompt to FaceTime them than call them. It's like, hey, I just got to see your face type of thing.
Yeah. No, but it's nice. I think it's like it's really nice that people are checking in with each other so much. I think you kind of like during a time like this, you understand the value of friendships, and the people that really check in, it feels good. It feels good to like know you got your core people, and it's not just about the industry.
100%. So for the audience, just to give you some context, so I know Edith because, we connected when I was at Def Jam. You were managing artists there at the time, and you have a management company. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what you do with your management company.
Yeah. So I started a company. I co-founded a company with Stan Green about 3 years ago. It was like May 2017. But I was at Rock Nation prior to that. And one of the things that I always felt like I was missing in my career was like the artist development portion. And at Rock, we really didn't get the opportunity to do that. I was managing like, mid-tier like and higher artists. So my goal with starting Arketek was I wanted to find people that I really believe in and nurture them. And, I'm not one of those people that like puts everything on a timeline. I feel like everyone has their own individual time periods that they need to grow in. And some people work exponentially faster and some people are a little slower. And there's nothing wrong with that. If I see talent in you and I love your personality and I see you as very ambitious and a go-getter, then we will grow together. And so most of my roster, they're either development talent, like talent that's on the verge of emerging right now, or we kind of developed our projects together from scratch. So it's been a fun 3 years, and I'm actually very surprised at how quickly we were able to grow. And I'm just impressed with how quickly our roster has developed in this short period of time.
No, 100%. And to
Yeah.
speak towards your management skills, I have to say, you're definitely on point. One of the best managers I've been able to work with at
Thank
Def
you.
Jam. And when I was there, obviously super attentive to detail.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those. I do pay attention to detail, but
yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
that's something I kind of learned um, from the beginning of my career. Like if you let tiny
right,
little things slip through the cracks, those are usually the things that end up blowing up in your face.
right,
So I kind of have learned to like take my blinders off and see any kind of potential issue and try to prevent everything from, crashing into a wall. So
right.
that's like every manager's job is to prevent any kind of potential issues every single day, probably a million times.
No, 100%. And I think it speaks volumes, obviously, like what you've been able to do in your career. But speaking of your career and your journey, obviously that hasn't, didn't necessarily happen overnight. Like, let's kind of go back a little bit, what your early influences were in terms of music. Did you grow up in a house of music? How did you get started?
I did. It's funny because my mom likes to say that like my sister did push-ups in her crib and I was humming in my crib. So I was always, musically driven, and
Hmm.
I definitely found a connection with hip hop and R&B from a very young age. Um, but I think like my first cassette tape was Janet Jackson or Michael Jackson. I think it was like Thriller, and
Really?
um,
Okay.
yeah, I think so. But anyway, so my mom and my grandmother sang professionally. My mom sang opera in Poland, and so my house was always like they were playing Rolling Stones. We had a bunch of musicals on in the house. My mom actually was a co-owner of a Polish deli in Chicago, and all they did was play like 90s R&B. So
Love that. I
I,
would be in there all day.
yeah, it was great. It was great. I hung out there a lot. So
Yeah.
it was like I feel like I always just was driven towards music. And like I did dance, like I did hip hop and modern dance, whatever. I was always in choir. I was always like in every single musical. I had like little leads in choir. It was just, and I played like four different instruments. I was great at piano, piccolo, flute, clarinet. So we
Wow.
definitely did have,
That's
I
impressive.
know. I tried to pick up guitar, but it started like ruining my nails because you have to know it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but it was music has just been so relevant in my life, and I feel like I'm like the girl that would lock myself in my room and just blast whatever it is, whether it's Ace of Base or Prince or whatever at the time. Um, but yeah, it's kind of helped. If anything kept me out of trouble growing up, it was definitely music.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for a lot of people that start their careers, for some, obviously, they have music in their households, but for others, they discover it in their own. So
Yeah.
obviously, you play all these instruments, you have all these different influences, you
Mhm.
know, your mom owning this Polish deli, they're playing R&B.
Yeah.
Um, so when going to school or college, like, what did you study music marketing, or was it, how did you kind of fall into like the music?
I have an interesting journey. I never really do things by the book in anything in my
Yeah.
life, and I'm kind of one of those people that's quick on my feet.
Mhm.
I don't I'm not necessarily. I was good in school, but I
Mhm.
was always bored very quickly, and so I just told my mom one day. I was always in the music scene in Chicago, so like um, you know there was the Lupe Fiasco and the R. Kelly and the Kanye. Like there were definitely a lot of different musical cliques in Chicago, and
Mhm.
I was interning at a independent record label over there, and I saw that I definitely like different aspects of music. I was always writing. um I was singing like backgrounds. I have like some all music credits like for like background singing.
Really? You got
Yeah, so
singing
the
credits.
random things
Okay.
like that. You know, I feel like I did have a stage mom. She definitely did want me to be a singer, but I loved the business aspect. So when I was interning, I didn't know exactly what it is that I wanted to do in music, but I knew that I wanted to pursue it. So I finished high school in 2006, and I just drove cross country, and I enrolled in SMC and business classes. And I mean, I went to school for free. I had a whole difficult situation when it comes to student loans. So instead, I just figured out a way to go to school for free. So I took UCLA extension classes. And when I finished SMC and started with the extension classes, I met this amazing manager and great friend of mine, George Robertson, who at the time was kind of like, he kind of had his own independent street team, and he would work with Interscope. And so I would help him out with, LMFAO when LMFAO went around clubs. He had Iggy Azalea for management. He also had like Lady Gaga. She would go around to different clubs. And it was more like street marketing or taking, promotional kind of club performances and stuff.
Right.
And so George ended up becoming an A&R at Interscope. And that's around the time when he signed Iggy. And he also wrote a song called Sexy and I Know It by LMFAO. He wrote the hook. And so I saw him doing all these kinds of things, and I'm like, man, I know I would be good at management. Like, I'm pretty positive that I could do that. And I saw what he was doing, and I'm really, we talked about it. I'm like pretty organized and stuff. I keep people, I keep people very well scheduled. I can't talk.
Yes. Yes.
But then on top of it, I already had like the musical background, so I knew. I always like to say that young like teenage girls in high school, they're probably the best A&Rs. And I always kind of considered myself like that. Like, I found different music, whether it was on YouTube, or I would just like go out to different concerts in Chicago or in LA. And that was actually how I met this band called Capital Cities. I went to a performance of theirs randomly. Do you know Capital Cities, Safe and Sound?
Yeah.
Lift you up. So I randomly went to a concert, and it was a very small performance. It was like right when they were starting out. And this was after I already, had, worked with George, and after the whole thing in Chicago. And I was trying to find a way into music. But, it was difficult. Like, there's a lot of competition, and kind of had already gone through all the interning stuff. So I was like, well, if I'm going to get my foot, through the door, it's probably going to be in management. So I started taking different meetings. I met with like Dawn Richard, who was looking for management at the time, and she had just left Puff. Then I also, like I said, I ran into Capital Cities at their performance, and I heard their song Safe and Sound. So I just walked up to them and said, like, you guys are amazing. I have some experience in management. What do you guys like? What are you guys working on? What are you guys doing? And they said they actually happened to be talking to a different manager right now, but they love my personality and they would love to get me involved. So they set up a meeting between me and Dan Weissman.
Okay.
So, Dan wasn't looking to like bring anyone on at the time. They were just about to sign their management contract. So I followed up with Dan probably like twice a month just to check in and see if he needed anyone on his team. He had Mike Posner play, and then Capital Cities was blowing up, and Cap Cities was definitely like, I just loved their music, and I thought that single was going to be huge. So they ended up getting a record deal with Capitol Records, and I happened to hit him up the same day that they were going to sign their contract. And he was like, actually, I now need someone on my team. Can you come and help me out? And, like I said, he had Posner, he had Wale, he had Cap Cities. So came in and helped him out with everything. I was with him for about 2 years. And then Rock Nation, after, Safe and Sound became such a global hit, and they got nominated for a Grammy for their Safe and Sound music video. Rock Nation wanted us to come in and start managing their roster and bring our roster on as well. So that's how I ended up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, so then when I got to Rock Nation, I was really doing the day-to-day stuff with Wale. It was very, he was probably my main one at the time. And then I was with Capital Cities anytime they had any kind of promotional gigs, or any concerts or radio gigs, whatever, I was with them. But when I met Jay Brown, he took me under his wing immediately, and he was like, Dan, like I want her to just, you know, go straight to management right now, become an artist manager, and I want her to meet with Big Sean. So I met with Sean, and we hit it off immediately. I also met with DJ Mustard. I had Melanie Fiona, Santi Gold, Hit Boy. I still worked in LA while he was over there, and then, you know, it just kind of like Big Sean became like Big Sean and Mustard. I feel like were like the two artists that I was with the entire time I was at Rock Nation for the most part. But it was a really good experience. I very much enjoyed working with all of them, and it's and you get to like dabble in different aspects when you're at Rock Nation. Like it's not they're not just a management company. So I actually brought in Joelle James for publishing. She wrote Boot Up for LMA, so I brought her in.
Okay.
So she signed to pub over there. She's a really good friend of mine. She's an amazing girl. Then I also brought in Chad Sabo, who wrote and produced a song called Never Ending on Rihanna's Anti album. They signed him to pub over there too. And then I brought in Dorothy, who actually was managed. It all comes full circle because George Robertson managed Dorothy. Dorothy ended up signing to Rock Nation for publishing and for label. And she had like a crazy amount of records that did, I mean, it was like in every video game, like every sync that you heard, especially like on ESPN, like her songs were all over the place. So I got to like dabble in different parts, not just management, but also A&R. And then I helped Big Sean with Dark Sky Paradise album and A&R that. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I kind of just retract back to what you mentioned. You know, you kind of, you know, stumbled upon this manager would be like a mentor in some respect, right? This is your story. Is it George, right?
George, yeah.
And then, you know, obviously, you know, he becomes an A&R, signs Iggy to Interscope, and then, you know, on the management side as well, you also meet Dan, you know, kind of meeting all these different type of mentors. And then once you start Rock Nation, you know, with Jay Brown. So, you know, a lot of these, you know, obviously amazing, smart people kind of bring you under their wing and kind of speak to that. I think it's important. I think especially a lot of young people that are starting, kind of obviously leaning on people that can really guide them through their careers. Maybe speak on that experience a little bit.
You know, it's funny because I remember, I think I was 22. Now, one of the most random things that people don't know about me is that I had to, so I mean, my parents, I come from a strong immigrant background. Like my parents came to America when, like, I think they were like 23 or something. They came with like $100 of a green card in the lottery when Reagan was president that they just happened to win. They didn't have a place here. They had to figure everything out on their own. So they instilled like, you know, just a hard work ethic. And, you know, with having, you know, the co-ownership of the Polish deli, and then my dad being a jeweler and my mom, you know, being a dental hygienist, technician, they taught me to have multiple sources of income and figure out different ways of like, whatever your dream is, sometimes you're not going to make money on it for a very long period of time, and you have to figure out a way to get by. So when I was at SMC and I was going to college there, they had a cosmetology program. So I actually ended up getting my cosmetology license, and I did hair on the side while I was interning and while I was an assistant. So the entire time I worked for Dan, I did hair. The entire time I helped out George, I did hair. And and it's funny because those relationships like come full circle too, because some of my friends, some musicians that I work with right now, I used to do their hair when I was an assistant for a hairdresser back in the day. So, but that was my only source of income because I wasn't making any money on music. But you know, they've always taught me, when I say they, my parents have always taught me that, like, you know, you're going to figure it out. Whatever your dream is, you're going to figure it out, but you just also have to figure out how you can be realistic with it. And sometimes, you know, you're going to fall flat on your ass and you're going to need your little backup, whatever it is. Like if you're a bartender, I know plenty of musicians that are, you know, very successful producers or songwriters, but they're also bartenders, or, you know, they work at a nightclub or something. Like we've chosen a very tough profession. And
Absolutely.
sometimes just when you're on your way getting in there, or in between, you know, productions, in between, like, you know, sometimes there's a dry spell for producers, and sometimes they'll fall back on whatever their side hustle is. I think that that's super important. And I think that sometimes people can be very unrealistic, and they'll, you know, for example, I, not me personally, but I've experienced friends that have gotten publishing deals and label deals, and they've blown through all their money because they didn't have a side hustle, you know?
Right.
And then when their advances are all up, they're like, well, shit, what do I do now? And they have to go back to whatever their side hustle was before they got any of those advances. So I always kind of like try to instill that in my clients as well, that, like, you know, there's no shame in ever figuring it out while you're going for your dreams, you know?
Yeah, I think you hit a really key point, because I feel like a lot of artists, and especially coming in and, you know, putting all their eggs in that basket, wanting to obviously get their career started, whether you're an artist or you're a songwriter, producer. But to your point, like, you know, I think it's important being hardworking, but also being realistic and smart about it.
Yeah.
You side hustled, you know, obviously being a hair, styling hair, and I think a lot of times, you know, people just kind of come in 100% without really planning things out,
Yeah.
kind of falling flat that way. And it's a
Yeah.
great lesson learned. You know, there's no shame in doing it, having multiple hustles, like having your day hustle during the day and then focusing on your craft at night.
Yeah.
You're
And
like,
that is the only reason why I was able to actually really get into music, to be honest.
yeah,
Because if I come here, I had so many friends that came here to LA around the same time and tried to make it in music. And their parents were like, okay, just, you know, get your ass back to Philly or wherever they were from.
hmm
And just, you know, you're not making any money, you're struggling, come back and be with your family. And for me, it was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to struggle. I'm going to figure this out. And I might, you know, I might win some and I might lose some. But, you know, I always get up no matter what ever happens in my path. And I look for that in the clients that I represent as well. Because, you know, sometimes we'll have a bad day together, and
yeah,
next day might be great. You know, sometimes if a songwriter or a producer confirms an amazing placement, like say Rihanna or something, Beyonce, and then the next
right.
day you find out that that song is falling through and it's not placed, like, it, things like that are going to happen, but you have to just kind of, you know, persevere through that. So one of my top things in my career in general, and also in starting an independent management company,
hmm
which we also are a publishing company. We have a venture with Sony TV. Um, my major thing is like, just get through all the no's, because I probably get 10 no's and 2 yeses, you know, like in a day. And that's something you have to get through, because a lot of people kind of fall back on the, oh, nobody wants me, or nobody wants
Right.
to work with me, or oh, do
Mhm.
people really like my music? But you have to believe in yourself so much. You have to have like that Michael Jordan mentality. Like, you have to believe in yourself so much that no matter what anyone says about you, or no matter how many no's you get,
Right.
you're just gonna pick yourself right back up and get to it.
100%. I mean, it also says a lot about you, because you were persistent with Dan. You were calling him twice a month, you know, to try to get that gig. What were some of the, like, obviously a lot of the hard work ethic obviously was instilled from your family. What were those early challenges for you as you're trying to navigate as a young manager,
Mm.
also dealing with artists as well, you know, for the first time, obviously in a bigger scale? Like, what
Yeah.
are some of the things that you were coming across, and like, how did you pivot? How did you challenge it?
So when I was young, yeah, I'm in my 30s now. So okay, how about this? When I was younger,
We're all
um,
young.
I used to I used to call myself, like, in my early 20s. I'd be like, I'm really good at dot connecting. Like, I can connect the dots.
Yeah.
I can always connect people, connect everything. Like, figure out how to do something. I never take no for an answer. You know, if one of my clients says that they absolutely need something, we figure it out. And I'm really like, I learn really fast. So I feel like I organically came into a position with both, you know, management, A&R, and the publishing and label side. I fell into a position where I just happened to be really good at it. Like, music has always been my thing, but I'm naturally really good at it, and I'm well aware of that. But my issue is more so, I had a lot of challenges being a young woman in the industry, for sure. I think that I've had to work about 50 times harder, and I'm not even exaggerating, than, you know, an average male manager. And I wrote an article about it. I probably am perceived as an assistant more than a manager, unless, like, you know my reputation and you know who I am in the music industry. That's different. But if you're a doorman at, you know, a venue, then you're going to assume I'm a makeup artist or I'm an assistant or something. And that's just because I'm a female manager, and there really aren't that many of us. It doesn't matter how well spoken or how, you know, how great I am at what I do. People don't perceive female managers to be in a position of power still to this day. And I think that it's amazing what's going on with the A&R realm right now. So many females are coming into positions of like creativity, which I absolutely love. But I do think that we need to start pivoting and not thinking that women in management positions are only strictly administrative or there for their organizational skills. Like, we are also there because we're smart business women, and, you know, we can get you a really great contract just like a male manager can. So there's definitely an issue with perception in music that a woman is not in a strong leadership role when it comes to management. And that's been something that I've had to fight consistently throughout my career. And also with women, if you look young, then, you know, you're also perceived to not really know too much, even you do, just because you look young and you're a female. So that's been my major struggle in music. But it's something that I feel like, because I've been so vocal about it, and because I told myself that I'm going to break these barriers so that other young women don't have to encounter the same issues as me. So, you know, I did write an article in Billboard about it, and a lot of women have reached out to me, you know, entertainment attorneys. I even had like an editor at Complex reach out to me, and another editor at Fader reach out to me after I wrote it and say, like, listen, we deal with this in, you know, in our roles as well. It's not just for female managers. I had like a very prominent music attorney had reached out to me as well, and she was like, yo, I've been dealing with this for the past 20 years. So, you know, women are still dealing with it. It's not just a management thing. So I'm hoping that like my generation can help break down the barriers that, you know, the generation prior to me has broken down for us, just to make it a little easier.
No, 100%. I feel like you're already paving the way. I mean, hopefully, you know, this podcast and, you know, obviously the article that you wrote can continue to inspire, you know, young women that are entering the music space, so they don't get, I guess, just caught up in the idea that they're limited to like one role. That music is for everyone, and any role is for anybody, regardless of like who you are.
And
So
we're definitely getting there. I see just in the last 5 years alone, I see such a crazy difference in how the music industry is evolving, and making room for women. And there are so many amazing male executives that have given me a chance. You know, like you mentioned before, you know, Jay Brown, and prior to that, Dan Weissman, prior to that, George Robertson. Like, those were, you know, 3 great men in my life that have given me a shot, and saw that I bring a lot of value. And because of them, you know, it wasn't another woman, it was 3 different men that have helped me out. So, you know, I definitely do appreciate so many men in the music industry. I just am grateful too that there's room for us to be in leadership roles and creative roles now.
no, 100%. I feel like, you know, like I said, you're paving the way. There's amazing women, obviously, in the community that I'm great friends with. So it's great to kind of see them just really just crush it every day, you know, and do the things that they do. So, you know, obviously, you know, you're navigating through the space. You're working with Dan at some point, and then you guys start working with Rock Nation. You become this, manager, part of Rock Nation, working with some major acts, Big Sean, DJ Mustard. Uh, as you're building your career here, what are some of the things where what are some of those small wins that you're starting to see for yourself as you're really building your resume? And, are you building that confidence, during this time? Because, it's pretty much you're stepping, along this ladder through this experience that you've had.
It's funny because I think I built a lot of my confidence when I was working with Big Sean.
Hmm.
He, first of all, he's like an amazing human. Like,
Yeah,
just, and
I
I,
heard great things.
right? Like, he's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
He treats people really well. And because of like our working relationship, I feel like I was able to bring in some more aspects of that people weren't aware that I was good at. For example, marketing is really fun for me. So
yeah,
Sean allowed for me to bring all my ideas for his rollout and kind of like spearhead, him and Mike Carson and myself. Like the three of us really had different types of, like, for example, we had an idea that we're gonna get a jet and we're gonna do 4 cities in one day when he drops Dark Sky Paradise. And
crazy.
I remember hey, you know what? I called Def Jam and I remember I told Def Jam that we wanted to do this and they're like, oh
Yeah.
really? How are you gonna do it? With what budget? Nelly Ortiz and
Hmm.
Jennifer Justice at Rock Nation, they actually helped us out so much. They managed to get Wheels Up to come in and give us a private jet for free. And Def Jam just had to pay for like the crew, I believe the crew salary and like the gas. And that was it. And it was such an amazing deal because, Wheels Up had just kind of started and they wanted to partner with different artists in different aspects. And Rock Nation and their brand partnerships were able to come in and like, figure out how to actually make it work. But there were different aspects to this, just let's go to 4 cities in one day and do promo. I remember telling Jay, I want to invite like Rolling Stones and Complex, maybe High Snobiety, MTV on this jet with us. And Jay's like, okay, go for it, kid. So, so,
Love
so,
it.
Tracy Wynn actually, she was Sean's publicist at the time. She's with the
Hmm.
Kardashians now, but
Right.
she, ended up calling like Complex and Rob Markman when he was, at MTV doing MTV News
Yep.
and Jinx when he was at Complex doing Complex News. So the two of them ended up joining us on the flight, and we did 4 cities in one day, and it was such a
Crazy.
great emotional run. But it's the fact that like Sean let me spearhead those kinds of things and those campaigns, and like
Yeah.
his entire rollout, I was such a big part of, and his entire album, and I administered and coordinated that entire thing with Lisa Brunson, and so I got to spread my wings like with the administrative aspects, and Lisa, who's a hard ass and like will never let anything slip through the cracks. She taught me
Yeah.
everything that I need to know about coordination and admin. So I think that project in general and working with someone just so kind and so like, happy to see you grow, like
Right.
Sean and like Jay, that was a really big, like, it was a pivotal moment in my career where I felt very confident in what I was doing. And I also was able to apply that in everybody else that I worked with after that. So, I'm at a point in my career right now where I feel like I'm more seasoned. Like I've experienced a lot in my career. I've done a lot of different rollouts. I've, put together a lot of different albums and A&R albums and managed different albums or different artists at different tiers. So I feel very
Right.
confident in who I am. More so now, and why I started Arketek is because it's a different feeling when you build something from scratch.
Right.
And Saint Bodhi is, the one that was at Def Jam, that we discovered. Stan and I discovered her, put together her project with her, got her everything from like, her agent at ICM, her deal with CSAC, like,
Mhm.
her publishing deal with Sony TV under our partnership,
Right.
and Def Jam with Steve-O and Paul Rosenberg, like it's a different kind of feeling when you're building somebody. And when I met her, like, she had absolutely nothing going on. And we were able to put her into different, different rooms and different sessions and with different people, and pair her up with, musically, like, people that are as musically gifted as her, that were just able to really collaborate very well. And doing that it's a very special kind of feeling, because seeing something grow right before your eyes, it's like I can only compare it to, like, having a child, right? Like seeing your child grow before your eyes and being so proud of it. So I'm at that point now where everything that I'm doing, I'm developing from scratch, and I'm very happy to see it grow. And I'm very happy to be a part of everything that I've worked on. And, even like when we part ways, because, management, sometimes there's an expiration date when you work with management clients. Just seeing them evolve and being happy that you were able to put them in a position where they're able to go and, move on. That's a great feeling for me. And I honestly think that working with people like Jay, Jay kind of prides himself on that too, that, he's able to take something and, build it from scratch and build it brick by brick. And he's proud of that. He's proud of the fact that that was something that he grew on his own. So the challenges that I'm facing right now is just different timings of different projects that I'm developing. And that is probably my biggest challenge. But I've been very lucky to meet the artists that I have met and to be on the same page with the artists that I've been working with. Because that's ultimately the most important thing. When you meet someone, you guys have to be on the same page. And, I've had mid-tier artists hit me up and ask me to manage them. And I told them, like, you know what, to be honest, I don't have that much of a connection with the project that you're about to put out. It's, I just don't have that kind of connection. So I feel like you should either stick with your current management, or, I can recommend somebody else to you. But I need that feeling, because I run with passion every single day. And I have to have passion for the project. I've gone through that before, where you lose passion for what you're doing. And that's just not something I'm willing to do on a day-to-day basis.
I think that's important to note. So obviously, there's a lot of, gems there that you spoke about. Kind of backtracking a little bit, like with your experience with Big Sean, and obviously being a pivotal moment for you to really like build your confidence and having ownership with the project. And, I think that's super important, especially if you're like mentoring people, really giving them the opportunity to like just jump into the water, like, and, swim and figure it out. Sometimes the hand holding it's more so about just letting them, make mistakes and having the freedom to think outside the box.
Get your feet wet, jump in. Like, I'm not the type of person that's going to learn by somebody holding my hand. I need to literally jump in and I'll figure it out. But you know what? I feel like those are very important qualities to have if you're working in a career like entertainment, because you can never predict what direction the industry is going to go in. I'm pretty sure that none of us expected for the industry to be leading so strongly with how we're making money these days. Remember when I was a kid, there was this producer that I knew, and he was a very successful producer. I'm not going to say his name, but he decided to leave the music industry because he said it's a dying industry. There's no way that the industry is going to figure it out. So he went into the movie industry, and he's a movie producer. He's doing pretty well for himself right there. But it's the fact that, like, a lot of people, when they saw what was happening with Napster and LimeWire, and people just downloading music illegally, people freaked out and just jumped ship on music. And I was like, well, I mean, this is what I love to do, so I'm guessing I'm going to have to figure it out. But the industry always figures it out. Right now we're going through a crazy fiasco with, like, what in the world is going on with this Corona thing. But I guarantee we're going to figure it out. If we have to, like, do album release projects, like our album release parties on
Zoom.
live. I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing them, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Or if we're going to do meet and greets and small intimate shows with like 20 or 30 people max, I'm pretty sure we're going to figure out how to do that. You know, I the industry has a way of surviving. That's my point. And that same thing that the industry does is something that, as an executive or as a songwriter or as a producer, you need to also be able to evolve with it. Otherwise, you're just gonna, you're gonna fall stagnant.
Yeah, I think you hit a couple points. I think in terms of the industry, just being adaptive, you know, adapting with the times, but also just being creative. I think for the people that are successful, they really think out of the box, or like they think forward. They don't get comfortable with the status quo, and
Yeah,
they're willing to take risks, especially at a time of uncertainty. So I think
yeah,
it's important to make those notes. And then with the industry as a whole, just being creative, especially now. I think artists have an opportunity to just be the most creative they can be.
yeah,
With really no rules to it, when you think about how to market your music, how to create your music.
yeah,
I think that's important to know, especially because that's how the music has evolved over the years, from iTunes to streaming, and now we're doing Zoom.
yeah,
Zoom.
yeah. And we're doing Zoom birthday parties and stuff for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
So, yeah, we're I don't know how long this is all gonna last, but
Right.
regardless, we're all gonna figure it out. And I know that some people are feeling like, man, like, is there a light at the end of this tunnel?
Mhm.
And there really is. And the light is on right now. It's just about
Yeah.
how what you figure out every single day. And it's a tough time because you turn on the news and everything sounds miserable right now. It sounds like, oh my god, how many more people died, what is going on, how many more people are infected. It
Right.
freaks you out. And I know that there's a part of me, and I'm sure that there's a part of everybody else that's like, well, I don't know, I just you go into
Yeah.
like this kind of anxiety type thing. But then
Yeah.
if you kind of step back from that and you allow for yourself, I mean, Drew, I know you love what you do. I can tell
Yeah.
you love what you do.
Yeah.
It's funny when I run into people that have that kind of spark in them. I feel like there's like a camaraderie between us. And
Yes.
yeah, and so I felt that, kind of like, okay, he really, really loves what he does. Like, I really love what you do with Digilogue. And you're incredible at digital marketing.
Thank you.
And I know that passion that you have, there are
Mhm.
so many other creatives that have that passion, and I have passion for what I do. You just have to
Yeah.
remind yourself every day and like set yourself in a schedule and stuff and figure out how to like just be able to breathe through this time and
Yeah.
remember that everything will go back to normal soon. So
Yeah.
sorry. That's
No, no.
my feel on this.
No, it's super important to note that this situation is temporary, and
Hmm.
that I think collectively, we have a great network of people
Hmm.
to inspire us. Even especially in those days where we feel like we're uninspired. Like, I check in with people, and people check in with me, and I think that's probably my biggest advice for people that are going through it. Maybe
Yeah.
they hit like a creative block. um, it's sometimes you just have to maybe read a book, or do something outside of music sometimes, and go back
Yeah.
to it. So, and also having the right people around you to just remind you that you're great at what you do,
Yeah.
and this is a temporary situation you know
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
What inspires you every day? Like, is there something that every day, like, is there a
Yeah.
mantra, or is there someone in particular that inspires you every day?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a couple of things, at least on the Digilogue side. I think, when I first started working in music, I didn't necessarily have like a straight arrow where
Mhm.
people, like, you go through an internship and you kind of work your way up. I had to
Mhm.
figure it out on my own. I was kind of outside looking in. So for me, like, I generally want to connect people, like, to your point, like, you're a dot
Yeah.
connector. I
Yeah.
like people that don't necessarily have access to feel like they have a chance to have access, and that's what the Digilogue is really about. You know, it's a starting point for people. We're not here to guarantee you any deals or anything, or you know, but hopefully the resources that we do offer will upstart your career in some capacity and help them. So I've always just been big on that, just trying to help people in that regard. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not you know, I'm not necessarily changing the world in that respect, but at least on the music side, I'm passionate about music, and I figure why not triple down on the things I'm passionate about and help people in that regard. And when it comes to like working with artists, I just generally listen to music 24/7. So I remember before we started, we had a prep call. I was listening to music, and I just like listening to music. It makes
Yeah.
me feel a certain way, and I've been listening to a lot of music, especially during this time, just to like kind of remove myself away from all the chaos, and just kind of like put myself in this creative mindset,
Hmm.
and focus. And uh, I'm sure people feel the same way when they listen to a new song, or that melody, or that hit, that note, and you're just like, wow, that feels really good. So that's the way I feel about music, and I generally love listening to music. Outside of my projects, you know obviously I listen to music that I work with in terms of my artists, but I have my own, when that's over, I have my own playlist that I
I
listen
was
to.
about to say, why are you not a curator? Like, why are you not a curator?
I mean, I care. It's
At
on my
Drew
head.
Curator, why are you? You should already have like a whole playlist at Apple or at
Uh,
Spotify or at Tidal that you should already. What are you doing?
I know. No, I mean, it's just one of those things that I'm generally passionate about. So, it's and that's the reason why every day when people ask, like, it's like, do you feel like you're working? Yeah, I mean, it's hard work, but I don't really think it's work in that respect, like the other people.
When you love what you do, it's different.
Yeah, no, for
I
sure.
remember, so like, for some artists that don't have budgets for travel agents, then it
Yeah.
falls on to book travel. And it's like the most tedious process. I hate it. I hate booking travel. I hate like
Mhm.
mapping out and like figuring out how you can tour on the lowest budget possible. Um, but it's something that I do, and I enjoy, saving money for my clients and
Yeah.
helping them out with building their fan base and stuff. So even though it's so tedious and it's like I really never want to do it,
Right.
I still at the end of the day feel like, oh wow, okay, I accomplished that. I did that for them. We
Right.
worked on it together, and they're going to go out on this amazing tour, and
Yeah.
we're just going to keep building and building and building. So I get it, and I get how it feels to, go to bed at night and just feeling like, wow, I get to spend the day doing what I love. Like, how lucky are
Right.
we? A lot of
Yes.
people, I come, even though I'm from Chicago, my parents moved out to the northwest suburbs in a small town. And I remember my teachers telling me there's no way in hell I'm going to work in music. And now I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
really? Hmm.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Hmm.
I guess it okay for myself.
Interesting. I know.
But they're like, it's very tough industry. There's no way you're going to work in music, but we get to do what we love. We're very lucky. We're very fortunate to be doing what we're doing. So
Mhm.
even on the rough days, and I know that I know you have to map out a lot of promo. Okay, I know you have to do a lot of office visits and stuff. I know they probably see you like 50 times in one week.
Right.
But it like you enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think it's not, especially in the beginning. I'll be honest. I mean, I was broke, so we had to have side hustles, right? So we're
Yep.
figuring things out.
Wait, what was
Um,
your side hustle?
well, I mean, I was tutoring.
Okay.
I was
Ah,
refereeing
smart one.
volleyball. I was refereeing softball.
Were you really?
I mean, it was quick cash. I was just like,
I
I didn't
love
want. Yeah.
you said that
So
so quietly. You're like it's doing soft, I was doing softball. That's dope.
softball. Yeah. So And I give credit to anyone, obviously, the idea of pursuing your dreams
Mhm.
is it's a continuous road. It doesn't
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
Even now, even though I'm living it and experiencing it, I'm continuing to be driven every day. I'm inspired by other people.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I'm always reminded of like where I came from and how I got started. So I think the idea of like giving back, that, with the Digilogue, or just like connecting with people that are just trying to get, just trying to put their, get their foot in the door.
Yeah.
I'm happy to like talk to those people. I know I've been
See,
in that position.
I have to give you a lot of props for that because, being like, I'm gonna go back to being a young woman for a second. Being a young woman, and trying to get in the music industry, especially, my God, how old am I? God,
You're young
like
like me.
19 years ago, when I was first trying to get my foot through the door. It was tough because, one, you're a young, impressionable girl. Like, people are kind of looking at you that way. And it's tough for people to take you seriously. So I've encountered a lot of women, and women that I represent, by the way, that have felt that same way of like, how do I get in right now? And how do people take me seriously? And they've run through, like, I always say there's like three different tiers of the music industry. um, there's like the outer tier of the music industry, which are people that kind of like, they kind of fib and they say like, oh, I can do this for you, or I could do that for you, you should sign this contract with me. It's like a totally shitty, awful deal that you never want to sign, and
Right.
you're giving away like 50% of your publishing to a manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, um, you know, crappy deals that make absolutely no
Mhm.
sense for you. Those are those people that are going to do that, and they're going to take advantage of your hard work, and they probably will not connect you to anybody. Um, then there's like the middle tier of, people in the industry that, they may be in, and they may be doing well for themselves, but they might not necessarily be in a position of power where they're able to, give you some dope deals and hook you up with some great artists and some placements and shit like that. But they still, pardon my French, but
Sure.
they still, they still claim that they can kind of help you, and you fall into that, like, that way of
Right.
like, okay, well, they're gonna help me. Oh wait, but they didn't help me, but they promised
Yeah.
me and they said that I'm great, and people
No.
get kind of lost in that. But then there are those core people like yourself that do
Appreciate.
these incredible things, that help people, that elevate people, because if you're only as strong as the people you help elevate. And that's the reality. Like, you know, Jay and Dan and George, to be honest with you, if they haven't hadn't elevated people along with them, because like
Mhm.
Dan had David Stromberg before I worked for him. And David
Right.
Stromberg is with Travis, and he's killing it with Travis Scott. So it's like, you know, if you're only kind of as strong as the people that you elevate with you, and you're doing an incredible program where you actually are helping connect those dots. And what you do on your platform with Digilogue is so beautiful too, because you're providing different, companies that are looking for interns, or for assistants, or just
Right.
those doors opened. And a lot of people, back in the day when I was trying to get into music, I had no idea how to do it. And to be honest with you, I had no idea what publishing was and how publishing worked.
Right.
Now I have my own publishing company, but like,
Yeah.
no idea. I didn't know what the many aspects of making music were. But
Yeah.
you know, companies like yours provide the education that is so needed, for
Exactly.
our amazing creatives that have trouble figuring it out. Like, publishing is a tough thing. Like, it's not
Yeah.
something easy. Like, you have to actually sit there and understand what your contract says.
Mhm.
Recording contracts are not easy either. Like, you have to know
Right.
exactly what you're signing. But
Right.
but Digilogue allows for for those meetings and that networking to happen and stuff. So,
Appreciate it.
clapping for you for
Thank
that.
you for the
I think it's
plug.
really
Nah,
beautiful.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate the shout out. No,
Right.
I think it's to your point, I think half the battle is the education part.
Hmm.
Um, I think then there's a relationship part, and then there's the talent, right? So I think a lot of people may not know that the information is in front of them, but we're here just to really push people to like the front and say like, hey,
Yeah.
here are the people that you need to talk to. Here are the opportunities. And then not necessarily we're gonna like enable you, but just really just like, hey, this is your turn to like put all the hard work that you've worked on and apply yourself and give yourself a shot.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're also giving a platform, like
Yeah.
with your Digilogue performances, you're giving
Yeah.
artists a platform that they might not necessarily have at that stage in their career, and to be performing in front of executives. And I know you had some amazing curators at the event that I did with you, and you had you had like BET there, you had some
Yeah.
Spotify it was people that you might not necessarily get in front of at that stage in your career.
Mhm.
So you also chose really great performers, by the way. I thought
You
each
did it.
one of them was great. Yeah, I love
Sure.
that show in general. And the Dolby, that was a beautiful space.
Yeah.
um
No, I
i've
get it.
I've never been there before. That lighting installation is insane. So I think that like the there's listen, people try to network all the time. People try to go to different
Mhm.
mixers and stuff, but to actually put on shows and actually connect people, like actually connect people, is really a gift. So I've really been watching what you've been doing. Your panels were really great too with Digilogue.
Thank you.
And yeah, and then what, like I said, like you're very, very consistent on your platform as well. And I see people commenting whenever you're posting like, oh, this person is looking for a job here, and they're really engaging, and they're going like, oh my god, well shoot, I'm gonna click on this and apply.
Yeah.
And so anyway, keep that up. That's
No, I appreciate it.
great. Any way I
No,
could be any help.
no, I appreciate it. I think you pointed things out where I think the passion has to be there, and you're strongly passionate about what
Mm,
you do, and I give you a lot of credit because being an entrepreneur isn't necessarily the easiest thing. I mean, to start something on your own, manage your business, and really build your everything from scratch, right?
yeah,
You're creating things as you go.
yeah.
Um, and there isn't necessarily something that's um given to you. You have to like create those opportunities. To your point, you have 10 no's a day, and then you may have that yes later on. But I give you a lot of credit because being an entrepreneur is commendable. It's super
Thank
hard.
you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say one last thing about Digilogue, okay? There was something like Digilogue when I started out,
Mhm.
because there wasn't. I just hit I hit the pavement. I had to figure out who in the world would be willing to help me out, or just at least show me some kind of aspect of working in music. And like I had to figure it out on my own. So I mean, social media is like a beautiful thing right now, and I think that people are figuring out faster what it is that they want to do in their lives. But like, I know you and I come from a generation of, we had to figure out what kind of jobs there even are in music and what we'd
Yeah.
be good. So
Try
I
everything.
yeah, yeah, like what do I want to do? Um,
Right.
but so I want that's Digilogue's a great thing. But also, you mentioned something uh about the nose. It's funny because when I left rock, the day I left rock, Stan and I already had like the website set.
Mhm.
We had the people that we wanted to sign, which were all development acts at the time. We already had like everything lined up. And I literally, the same day I left, just pressed live on the website and pressed live on the emails. And I never stopped. Like, we immediately kept going, and it was really, really that first 6 months was probably the most rough. But
Yeah.
that year in general, the first year was really tough. And I
Mhm.
think that people were trying to figure out how serious I was about it, because they were used to me always being at another company and always being a worker bee, like, always being the one that holds the glue together for whatever company I was working for,
Right.
or being the glue that holds everything together. And now I was the one that was doing it for myself. So I immediately did a crap ton of meetings, and I, told them about what I'm doing. I told them about who I'm in the process of signing.
Right.
And like, I just just let them know immediately. But definitely within that first year, people were trying to figure out how serious I am about it and if I actually am going to follow through with, my company. And
Yeah.
I also had a lot of different positions that were thrown at me too. Like, there was an established, like, Grammy award winning, I'm just going to say that, like, musicians that decided to open up their own label and
Mhm.
publishing company, and they wanted me to come in and run it. But, I had to say no to certain positions, or we had to see that we weren't going to work out because I
Right.
wanted to get my company started and going.
Mhm.
And it was really tough to, have a reputation that I'm reliable and that I'm good at what I do, and
Yep.
get positions that I would have loved if this was like 2 years ago or 2 years
Yep.
prior. But at that time, I needed to build something for myself. And one
Yep.
of the things that Jay would always tell me is that, and Dan said this to me too, by the way, they said that you're never going, you're never, you're never really going to become like that reputable manager that has their shit together unless you start something from scratch yourself.
Wow.
And
That's
it's
awesome.
so funny because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm over here, like, I feel like I'm killing it. I feel like I'm doing great over here. All the
Right.
projects that I'm putting out are going platinum. Like, what do you mean? And then
Yeah.
I just realized that I kind of hit a glass ceiling, and I
Mhm.
needed to do it myself to show
Yeah.
everyone that I can do it myself. And I did. And I think that it was like, once it hit 2 years and Billboard was watching what I was doing, I had no idea that they were even paying attention to what I was doing. They hit me
Mhm.
up and they said, "Hey, we want to honor you as a Billboard Woman in Music."
Yeah.
Work with
Congratulations on
Arketek. Thank you. So that was, I mean, that was 2000. That was at the end of 2018.
that.
But
Mhm.
when they recognized me for that, I was like, okay, this is all so worth it. Like, thank God that, like, I decided to put my best foot forward and decided to believe in myself. Um, and because at the end of the day, that feeling, putting everything out there and
Mhm.
fighting for what you believe in, is, I wouldn't trade that for the world.
No, 100%. I mean, you decided to bet on yourself.
Yeah.
And there's no other feeling like it.
Yeah.
When all the naysayers start looking and be like,
That too.
oh, hmm. So Edith.
Wrong, and I'm going to prove you wrong.
No, that's super important. I think and it's great to, uh,
Sorry.
no, no worries. No, I think that's super important to really relay back to the audience because, um, we, I think a lot of people just kind of get caught up in the idea of just working for a company, which was, I think, important. Which is important in your career.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you jumped right into entrepreneurship. You kind of like went through your apprenticeship and learned from
Hmm.
these different people and built your experience. But to your point, you hit a glass ceiling, and instead of just being comfortable with that position, you challenge yourself, and them, you're like Dan and obviously Jay Brown really just motivating you to say like, hey, for you to be really a reputable manager is having ownership, and you've been able to
Absolutely.
do that. So
That's super important. I wish that, like, um, I wish that more people would, and more women too, would take it upon themselves to have ownership. I think that, like, I really appreciate what I've seen in, I mean, for a lack of, I'm trying to be like saying it a politically correct way, but there really isn't. There just aren't that many women that are doing what I'm doing,
right.
where we are owning publishing, where we are giving out publishing deals with an advance and stuff. Like, I don't give out shady contracts. I only give out good contracts. Like, I don't ever want to have a reputation that I'm going to, like, take advantage of somebody. That's absolutely not something that I can sleep with.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
and, you know, there's been a lot of men that I've observed, that, Kevin Lyles, like, I love Kev. He is like with 300. I love what he's done. And I've seeing what Jay did, seeing what Dan did, seeing how George built his company. He ended up signing Bishop Briggs, and Bishop did really great. Consistency with them and consistency with Kev and 300. Like, I've
Right.
appreciated seeing them build something from nothing. And I'm seeing more women do stuff like that for sure, but I'm still not seeing that many women, having ownership in publishing and giving out advances. And I'm slowly starting to see more female managers come about, and take that leadership role instead of like falling into that administrative, like day-to-day position. They're like starting their own companies and stuff. So I'm trying to support that as much as possible. And any kind of like, foundations and, organizations that are helping like promote women, that, in different strategic partnerships that we could do together. Like I am trying to team up with women. Eve Pierre at ICM is a really good friend of mine. And I try to like bring her as much of great talent as I possibly could. So I hope that in the next 10 years, I see more women building from scratch and just not being afraid to like, show them what we've got.
Yeah.
Because we can do exactly the same thing. And and it's not about a paycheck for me. Like we all need money, of course, but it's not about a paycheck for me. It's about what I'm passionate about. And and ownership and stuff, whether you're an artist or a songwriter or you're a producer or an executive, it's super important. And once you've kind of built through, the internships to assistant to, manager or, marketing director, whatever your role is, once you've kind of gone through all those different positions and you feel like you've educated yourself enough in music, you should definitely put yourself in a position where you could sign people and you could give them their first shot, and elevate their careers, elevate yours along with it, and also have an ownership in it, have a stake in it. And those kinds of partnerships, whether it's Jay and Jay Brown or, Jay-Z and Jay Brown or, Rihanna and Jay-Z and Jay Brown, like they've built something and they have a camaraderie and they're always going to stick together. And that kind of family, that's what you create for yourself. And that's the kind of value that you create for yourself when you build something from scratch. So, so I'm hopeful I see more of that.
No, definitely. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, they're paving the ground for it. The things you're doing, from the Billboard article to obviously podcasts like this, will hopefully speak to like, the young women are entering the music space to see that they're not necessarily conditioned to just do just the administrative stuff or assistant stuff. To your point, if they're interested in being an A&R, they should do it, pursue it. Or if they're interested in being a manager, not to be afraid to do it, and to see that there's amazing women like you that have done it and are doing it right now. So kudos to you, and just much respect, for everything that you've been doing with your management company and your career. So I just want to say thank you. I mean, this episode has been great. I got interviewed for a little bit, and for me, the way I kind of cap it off is I talk about lessons learned, and we definitely talked about a lot, but maybe I could talk about a few that I want to, before we go. So if you were to tell two things, your young self, what would you tell your young self to do differently, maybe like 10 years ago? And two, what would you say to a young manager in terms of like how to just maybe approach their artists, just kind of the day-to-day, in dealing with obviously labels and, booking agents and so forth?
I would tell my younger self not to be so hard on myself. I am a perfectionist, and I wish that I realized sooner that I was very, very capable and just like naturally good at what I do, because I put a lot of pressure on myself early on, and it used to make me really nervous. And I feel like I had to break through that initial nervousness of like, oh my God, am I fucking up? Am I fucking up? For anyone that's younger, and trying to get into music, I would say you most likely are not fucking up. yeah, you should be hard on yourself. You should be like a certain level of hard on yourself, but don't expect to be perfect at everything you do, because no one is perfect at what they do.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether you're a DJ or you're a songwriter and someone says that they don't like your song, or they think your set sucks, or you came up with a a promo plan and they're like, oh, this is all old, like you need to be more innovative. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
We all start out somewhere, we all fuck up somewhere, and the only way to get ahead is by learning. And so you have to just take away, like, make it as perfect as you can, but don't get stuck on being scared to put your foot forward because you're afraid you're going to fuck up. And I know a lot of young executives, a lot of young artists and producers and songwriters that struggle with that internally and have turned to me and talked to me about it. And I relate to that so much because I used to have that same feeling. But,
Right.
you're a lot more capable than, you think you are. And, if you fuck up, it's okay, because
Yeah.
we all have to learn from something.
100%. That's a great lesson.
And what was your second
And
question?
the second question was to, like, what would you say to a young manager?
Manager.
Say, they're
Well,
working for.
pay attention to detail, okay? Because that is one
Mhm.
thing that, like,
Yeah.
you cannot slip, because the second anything slips through the cracks, it's on you. It's not on the tour manager. It's not on the security fucking up and not being there on time. Um,
Right.
it is not on the travel agent for not booking the flight properly. It literally is on you. So when it comes to details, the most important thing that you should have instilled in yourself, ingrained in yourself, is that you're not going to go to sleep
Mhm.
until you have everything planned out. And I know a lot of young managers that struggle with this. And especially like the managers that are kind of like the buddies, they're kind of like the
Mhm.
friends of like the artist, or something.
Right.
They sometimes will not have it all together, but feel like they can get away with it,
Mhm.
because they're friends with the artist. But the thing is that if you want to maintain your spot with your artist, because the truth is that an artist is always going to choose their friend over any kind of business executive, no matter how reputable that person is, they're always going to want their homie by their side.
For sure.
But as their friend, you should have your shit together so much that you are irreplaceable. There should not be a reason why you would want to bring in another manager to come and help leverage something or whatever. Like, you're very, very capable. Just
Mhm.
absolutely keep going with it and be very detail oriented. Keep your spot.
Yeah. No, it's. I think you hit two great points, two great lessons learned. It's okay to fuck up. That's the only way to learn, and obviously being detail oriented.
Yeah.
Making sure you dot your I's, cross your T's, especially in your management, and taking ownership when things don't necessarily go your way. So
Yeah.
being responsible for it, that's super key. But Edith, I want to just thank you so much. I really enjoyed this episode, for taking the time to chat with me. I know you just had a long trip from Chicago, so
Well, thank you
appreciate
for
you
having me
taking time.
on. It's so
No,
funny
this
because
is,
you saw how the sun was up like crazy
I
earlier, and like
know.
getting dark, and then have the lights on right now. But it was like 100 degrees in LA when I was driving. It was 100 degrees, completely sunny.
Teleport me.
Second time I'm dropping my phone.
No, no
Um,
worries.
but thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, I just want to say thank you, and obviously the Digilogue community. Make sure to tune in to Edith Bow. We're gonna put her socials in the description. This is episode 7 of Lessons Learned. Make sure to follow Digilogue. Make sure to follow Edith, and we'll talk to you soon next episode.